Malicious compliance. Divorce deposition fulfillment. This happened about 18 months ago. I found the paperwork this morning and thought about it. I was going through a nasty divorce, complete with disappearing prenups, and my ex was making threats against my small business. When the deposition came, it requested tons of information about my business, bank transactions, tax returns, etc., and all documentation regarding asset sales or acquisitions. First I pushed back and said the administrative burden was excessive. They responded with tough fudge. Then I resisted with the argument that I refuse to supply information that will harm my business and the other stakeholders. We finally agreed that only the attorneys will have access to the business records. I asked several attorneys what exactly my rules for compliance are. Short version: each numbered request has to be presented separately, so I can't just throw all my responses in a box together. Do I have to send a box? No. Any other organization required? No. I responded with a zeal they did not expect. I gave them everything that matched their requests. As this was requested from the business, I was justified in using payroll to prepare my responses. So 5 of us went to work. So I printed off bank statements and bank transaction reports for 7 years for 10 accounts. Threw them in a pile, shuffled the whole lot. 1 question, 1 response. As an inventory-based business, every sales transaction is a change of asset, so I added all my sales records to that request. I printed full-page bright orange labels clearly identifying the case, the question, and business documents attorney eyes only. Then I banded the stacks very tightly together in piles about a foot tall with 500 pounds packaging straps. This makes a paperwork bomb that explodes with about 3,000 sheets of paper when you cut the straps. And there's no boxes to put them in after you open them. So on the last day in the afternoon, I delivered a pickup truckload of paperwork calmly to a group of expensive attorneys who were freaking out at the sight of cart after cart worth of paperwork being stacked up in their conference room. I purposely put all my personal documents and the smaller questions on the bottom. There's not enough money in the city to pay the attorneys to even touch this mess, let alone go through it. We settled soon after, and I sent a few employees to recover my documents, unopened. Edit. Here's a photo of what I still have to keep in retention, in case the feds want to look through them. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Edit. I realize from several people in the profession that I'm lucky to have settled and not had to face the judge for this. Sorry, you must have ice. This is a bit of a short and sweet one, and nowhere near the quality of the other posts I read here, but I just remembered it. Some years ago, I was at a bowling alley / pool hall with my brother-in-law, and feeling a bit thirsty, went to get a root beer, but I didn't want ice. The nice kid behind the counter explained to me that it was their policy to serve soda with ice. Me, okay, can you just give me a cup of ice? Kid, sure. I then throw the ice into the trash. Me, can I now have a root beer? Same cup. The kid laughed, filled my cup to full, and I paid. Told you it was short. It's just a few lines of code. Some time ago, I was working on a control system overhaul project. Out with the 1990s stuff, in with the newer stuff. One of the feature upgrades that allows a station to automatically handle multiple different model parts was impossible without more hardware and sensors. The previous configuration required several minutes of changeover for different model parts to ensure that the station was properly set for each specific model. I and my supervisor explained to a manager that what they were asking for required a revised budget, as there was no feasible way to write the logic to operate without certain inputs. It was essentially asking to install auto driving functionality into a car that didn't have lidar/radar, cameras, or any sort of external sensors, and thus was entirely reliant on the car's built-in GPS to find its way around, along with being blind to traffic and traffic lights as well. It's just a few lines of code. Figure it out. So my team came up with an idea. Have the operator manually input required data before each production cycle starts, which is about every 30 seconds, because existing control system setup just didn't know Otherwise the cycle will not start. I did ask for operators' input, and they all thought it was incredibly bad idea, but the manager insisted they would get used to it. Operators hated it of course, when it went live, and management heard the whining after a half a day of the madness. We were instructed to put in a bypass, and we got management approval to install it after putting our warnings in writing about having a control system blindly operate with a set of assumed conditions that may rapidly change. One of us put in an email statement, "You are asking us to create a self-driving car that assumes that it is on a straight highway and there are nothing in its way at all times. With the press of a button, we can do that if you have no objections." Have you ever seen a machine drill into itself, severe some high pressure coolant lines, and then attempt to cycle with the super expensive drill bits still tearing into the casted structural components? It was not pretty, as it turned out that super hard drill bits shatter instead of bending when struck by a high-speed transfer mechanism. I wish I could share pictures and more details, but that's against legal department's policy. Edit. The aftermath that people wanted. I don't know the exact money figures of the damages, but the biggest cost was the extended production downtime that the destroyed machine caused, which required several weeks of mandatory overtime production schedules on Saturdays and Sundays on functional production lines to make up for the missed production quotas. The machine itself was down for over 3 weeks. That's well into the multi-million costs of replacement parts, vendor/contractors to fix another client's mistake, repairing the large structural casted components, man has to troubleshoot, overtime for lots of people and so on. There were enough competent managers to prevent the manager from getting promoted or etc. And of course everyone's favorite, more anti-idiot procedures were put in place to ensure such future event would not happen again. Although the responsible manager is still around for whatever reason, in a different place with different title, maybe had just enough connections to avoid being shown the doors. I've heard it elsewhere, if anyone is asking for you to authorize something, think long and hard, and know what the risks are, because you will regret it. And always get it in writing to cover your ass. Just hit the key. I don't think that's a good idea, Grandpa. From my teenage years. Once upon a time I owned a 1988 Isuzu Trooper. I loved that vehicle, and I put it through hell. It put up with it for a long time, but a trip through Death Valley was the final straw, and it blew the head gasket. I loved this vehicle, so I wanted to keep it. I towed it to my grandfather's house, as he had an amazing garage. This man taught me an amazing amount. He was also in the pump field, see previous M/C, and a master machinist. He was also a Navy boxing champion. About 5 feet 6 inches, bushy white hair and beard, built like a brick house with a bottom line you didn't want to cross. Love Grandpa, but don't make him mad. Anyways, I get to his garage and I tell him what happened. We order a replacement cylinder head, gaskets, bolts, and I go to start taking it apart. He stops me. "Grandfather, where is it blown?" Me, "Grandfather, which cylinder is leaking?" Me, "Dunno, I was just going to pull the head." "Grandfather, no. First we'll run a scope into the engine to see if it's worth saving, but need to locate the blow. Pull the spark plugs." So I do. A few minutes later all the spark plugs are pulled, but even with a flashlight, can't see well enough. My grandfather looks at me. "Grandfather, turn it over." Me, "Grandpa, I don't know if that's a good idea." He cuts me off. "Grandfather, I said turn it over." Me, "Grandpa, it might be foo." He cuts me off again. "Grandfather, boy, I said turn it over now." Me, "Okay." He leans in close to the engine over the fender with his flashlight, and I hop in and hit the starter. My grandfather is greeted with a face full of oil/coolant blasting out of the #3 cylinder. He stands up with his face, hair, and beard covered and dripping a wonderful brown/green sludgy mixture. Slowly pulls a rag out of his pocket and wipes down his eyes/face. I'm trying to keep a straight face. He turns to face me and looks directly into my eyes, beard still dripping. Grandfather, I better not hear a ducking word out to you boy. Me, yes it. I miss that man. R.I.P. Grandpa. So, the number 3 you say? Thank you for watching, you amazing internet people.